Hi there. Welcome to the SoberCircle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
She likes me. Incoming! Wayne Butler, I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank the committee, Nikki and Lori, and all those associated with the committee for inviting me to come and spend this weekend with you folks. I've had a grand time, and it's not going to stop tonight. I'm going to enjoy the entire weekend, and I've been spoiled. I just can't hardly stand it. But don't stop. Had a fruit basket in my room. Had flowers given to me by the hotel, and it's just been a grand time. I've been taken out to eat, and I've been well taken care of. And Eric, the newcomer over here, he brought me a box of Imodium D to take care of the coffee I had, and it isn't working just yet. But I've had a grand time. I am really distracted right now by these lights that are just shining right in the side of my face. Not your problem, but I'll get over it as soon as I quit pouting about it. Steve gave a good talk last night. Carol, my surrogate mother. My mom and dad's both passed on, and I'm an orphan. Thank you. And Carol's become special in my life, as has my sponsor's wife, Charlotte. Alcoholics Anonymous is the best deal in town. If you're new, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I know we got two newcomers over here standing guard on the passersby. I think one has 15 days and the other has 14 days, and I got to ride down here with him, and it was just a pleasure to see the neuroses. We didn't even need to stop and get gas. Just Eric talked and we flew. I met my alter ego, Sean. Oh, my God. And tomorrow morning, I hope you don't bail out on the Sunday morning speaker, because you're going to miss not only a real treat, but a fine example of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know because she's in my home group, and I know she walks like she talks because I watch. And I hope you watch. If you're new in this room and the things I share tonight, I feel free to check it out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and in your own experience. And if you don't identify with me, make sure you go to another meeting and listen to another speaker. And please don't judge AA by my presentation tonight, because it's only my experience. And if you don't identify with it, I'd hate to see you leave AA just because you think it doesn't work for you through me. Make sure you make another meeting. Make a lot of meetings. This is probably... I've been sober almost 22 years. My sobriety date is November 8th, 1977. I hadn't had a drink, pill, powder, potion, or lotion from the neck up since that day. I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 next month. AA did good. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new in this gathering tonight, I want you to know that the most important message I probably have to share is that I love AA. It's going to take me a while to say it, but it's the most important thing I got to say. I love AA. And if you're new in this room and you don't understand what that means, you will. I know many of you are here for your first week, and I've had the pleasure of talking to a number of men and women alcoholics that this is their first roundup. I truly hope it's not your last. I'm going to tell you about my first roundup in a little bit, but I got to become an alcoholic first. It's kind of hard to get all thrilled about a roundup if you ain't an alcoholic or got some other kind of ism affliction. Did I mention I love AA? The reason I make that such a big deal is at the age of 18, I was diagnosed by a panel of 7 psychiatrists an irreversible psychopath. They told me I exhibited no form of conscience, remorse, guilt, or shame. They said I did not have the capacity to extend nor feel love, and that I never would. That was right after I tried to kill my entire family and influence a bottle of tequila, and so I don't drink tequila no more. And they told me I would never feel that emotion. I hope you hear that, because later on in my story, you're going to know that something betrayed that belief. Something happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. The power of Alcoholics Anonymous, the power that's contained in the rooms and gatherings like this with people like you all around the world. And I think it's important to mention that we're fast approaching our 65th anniversary of Alcoholics Anonymous. Do you realize there's over 5,000 years of recorded history where they had absolutely no solution for those of you who suffer from the spiritual disease of alcoholism? And so I'm going to do my very best when I tell you I love AA, means I honor the traditions to the best of my ability. Which means when I say I love AA, it means I'm going to show up. When I say I'm going to show up, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, not because of the threat of my sponsor, but because I respect and love Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why. And so when I'm asked to do something like this, I dress up. I dress up because my first sponsor taught me that. He says, we don't want to see how really sick you are. Put a suit on, pal. Newcomer ain't going to hear a word you're saying, but they'll see how you look. Give it a chance. And then I tried to challenge them. I went around everywhere I could go and looked for Bill and Bob's picture in something other than a suit when they were speaking in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have not been able to find it. My first sponsor told me when I can find a picture of Bill talking in a T-shirt, so can I. Hasn't happened yet. And I know I look good tonight. Thank you. It was a lie, but that made me feel good. I love AA. It helps to drink to be an alcoholic. Did you know that? Some people don't know that. I drink. I love to drink. I love Budweiser. Some people say that if all you drank was beer, you can't be an alcoholic. Oops. I drank Budweiser. I'm going to tell you how much I love Budweiser. When I see the Clydesdales in a parade, I weep. I understand Louis the Lizard. I'd get that weasel too. Now I'm going to tell you how much I miss Budweiser. I was at a convention in St. Louis a few months back, and as we were flying over St. Louis, I swear I could see Anheuser-Busch below. And I asked the pilot to slow down so we could have a moment of silence. I love Budweiser. And I also like fine wine, like Ripple, Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. Now, I don't know about you, but do you know why I like Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill? Because when I puke, it looks like I'm bleeding internally. People feel sorry for me and buy me a drink. Now I'd add on a little Mad Dog 2020 grape. Yeah. Now I'll tell you what, that won't do what Budweiser will do. That won't do what Budweiser will do, but it'll give you a condition that's terminal. You ever hear of that condition? It's called ATD, alcoholic terminal diarrhea. I swear to God, I had diarrhea for 6 years. When you've had diarrhea that long, you got to have good decision-making skills. And you got to develop split-second timing. And I'm a puker too. And I've got false teeth because I stood up a lot when I should have shut up a lot. Now I'm going to tell you something. I'm so good at puking, I could hit this front row right here and not even touch my shoe tonight. And if my denture falls out, Mickey, just catch it and give it back. It'll be all right. I remember I'd be at home. You know, my wife would never come into the bathroom with me. That was my throne of contempt. Whenever I'd come home, my wife would not follow me into the bathroom because she just never knew what might take place in there. One night I came home drunk and I went into the bathroom and I was in there ralphing for everything I'm worth, and all of a sudden my denture flew right out into the stool. I do know pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Because, see, I knew in a split second of time that if those teeth went down that hole, they were gone for good, and I can't afford another pair, so it's a race between me and the hole at the bottom. So I catch them just before they go down the shooter, and I think, well, what the hell, I rinse them off and put them right back in. I sure miss drinking. Now, I never intended for that to happen to me. That's not how I started drinking. That's how I ended up. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe where I'd ended up drinking. I did not know what was going to happen to me. I had no idea what was wrong with me. I've sat in meetings like this asking myself, what in God's name is wrong with me? I've been sitting in meetings with sober alcoholics wondering what is wrong with me. I wish I was like you. I wish I had your problems. I wish I was an alcoholic, not knowing what's wrong. See, just because I sit in a place like this does not indicate that I have alcoholism. Just because I sit in this place does not even indicate that I'm an alcoholic. It just means I'm a massive unrealized potential. But something's real wrong with me and I don't know what it is. I suppose I could blame my family if I look far enough, but I don't want to do that because as long as I blame my family, I never get to recover because I never get done looking at them to look at myself. Now, I'm going to tell you about my family a little bit, but not a lot. I'm not going to come up here and tell you bad things, what my dad did to me, my mom did to me, my brother did to me, my sister did to me, my uncle did to me, and I'm going to tell you why. They might want to come into AA and recover too someday. And I don't want them to be judged by you and I before they get here. They should have the same opportunity to stumble and fumble and bumble their way into AA and say, hi, I'm Larry, I'm an alcoholic, and you have no prior information about them whatsoever. It should be a free right for them to get in here. I will tell you this about my family. Watch Jerry Springer for about a week. It's like a Butler family reunion. My dad was an alcoholic. My mother was, God, I just love my mother. My mother was a professional wrestler. Now, you're going to hear Sharon talk in the morning. She's from my area. She understands. My mother was about 5 foot nothing. She weighed about 200 pounds with no fat. She had 4 arms twice the size of mine. She had a flying eagle tattooed on each one. She had other tattoos, but I'm not at liberty to disclose them. My mom was cool. She loved to beat up men. She loved to thump on them. I used to think my dad abused my mother, but I now know it was him screaming. She wasn't even an alcoholic. She was just trying to practice her Al-Anonism. Untreated. My dad died from untreated alcoholism. My mother died from untreated Al-Anonism. My brother is sober 18 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, goes one meeting a year whether he needs it or not. And I'm the only one in Alcoholics Anonymous in my entire family that's involved in the capacity of Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm involved in. I don't know that I'm the sanest one in my family, but I'll do till they change it. I love AA because AA has given me an opportunity to come out of the despair that I was in, the hopelessness and the futility of life as I knew it, that I had come to uncover and discover in my life as a way of life. All because drinking did something for me that it wasn't supposed to do. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, Dr. Silkworth gives a description of a person like me. And if you're alcoholic of my type, I presume like you. He talks about people like me, abnormal drinkers, drink essentially because I like the effect produced by alcohol. And that the phenomenon of craving engages and disallows me to stop when I want to, or when a good enough reason calls for it, I can't stop. That all sounds good, but I didn't really understand what that meant. It meant I was predisposed to a condition known as alcoholism. And I need to share this with you. I have a thing called alcoholism. That ism is a fascinating thing because it's what allows me to be in here with you tonight, because when I have the ism and I combine alcohol, something magnificent takes place in my mind that it's not supposed to. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a description of the ism, the ISM. It goes like this: internal spiritual maladjustment. You see, I have a spiritual disease. It's not limited to just a disease. What I have is a spiritual disease. And I have to know it's a spiritual disease, otherwise why would I render myself subject to a resolution called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous because they're spiritual in nature? Why would I submit myself to the power of a sponsor and a home group and the service that we all commit ourselves to if I don't believe it's spiritual in nature? And in the big book it says I have an internal spiritual maladjustment. Now I'm going to help you out because I know you don't believe me. Check it out. On page 53 it says, God is everything or he's nothing. God either is or he isn't. What's my decision to be? And then on page 55 it says, deep down inside every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. Now if you're new and you don't like the idea of God, I'm going to borrow you 3 of mine. Take whichever one you like or take them all. G-O-D, group of drunks. See, when I'm with you, I'm not with me. You hear me? Because when I'm not with you, I'm left with me. And I'm not alone. There should be a neighborhood watch sign right there. Not to keep anything from getting in, but in case anything might leak out. Then there's another one in the big book. It says, what we have here is a design for living. My sponsor said it's a good, orderly design, G-O-D. And then the other one is G-O-D, good, orderly direction. In the 12 and 12 it says, until I am ready to accept advice and take direction from someone skilled in this experience, I am left with sobriety that remains precarious. And so I have subjected myself to the ability to take direction from someone in my life who knows more about me than I do through his own personal experience. That's called my sponsor. So deep down inside every man, woman, child's fundamental idea of God. Then on page Roman numeral 24, we get the hook. It says, quote, I am maladjusted to life, in full flight from reality, and outright mental defective. Therein lies my hope for the future. Now you might wonder how this maladjustment affects myself as a child of God. According to Dr. Silkworth, and I might add collectively, Father Ed Dowling, Reverend Sam Shoemaker, and Dr. Harry Tebow, they have a collection of symptoms that causes me to have the ism that precipitates me from becoming an alcoholic. And I think it's important for me to share that I know that, because it allows me to sit in these rooms after 21 years and 11 months. When I tell you I'm an alcoholic, according to these fine men, here's what I'm really suggesting. I realize I look to you right now like I'm a full-grown, adult, mature man. In reality, I remain childish, grandiose, and gravely, emotionally immature. As a growing human concern, my natural state is one of growing anxiety, depression, and fear, coupled with an intense desire for excitement. A condition of being which renders me obsessive, compulsive, impulsive, excessive, controlling, demanding need for attention, acceptance, and unqualified approval. A condition of being which renders me restless, irritable, and discontent with life. Now you might wonder how that discontentment shows up in my spiritual nature, mentally and emotionally. Mentally, my thought life is governed by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, all of which drive me to live my life according to selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, inconsiderate, resentful, and frightened motives in life. Motives which, left unattended in me, arouse and engage dangerous and life-threatening, and I said life-threatening levels of lust. Try not to make eye contact right there. Pride, anger, envy, greed, sloth, gluttony. I turn into a pig. I want it all. That renders me emotionally a bit sensitive. Which means I have a strong tendency toward taking everything I see or hear personal. I don't like criticism. Strange as it seems, I can't stand praise neither. I don't believe you. When it comes to suffering emotionally, I don't like to suffer emotionally. I don't suffer well, and I don't suffer alone. Socially, I'm a bankrupt idealist and brooding perfectionist who lives defensively and guarded in fear of being found out. As such, I tend to rationalize, minimize, justify, and deny all my actions while casting blame upon innocent people in a vigorous attempt to avoid detection. Regarding my fellow man and woman, I demand, and I said demand, the absolute possession and control of everybody and every circumstance that enters my arena of life. Therefore, when I respond to you, I am quick to anger, slow to virtue, And I get a distinct, succinct delight and twisted pleasure out of judging and criticizing everybody I see. My outstanding characteristic is defiance. And rebellion dogs my every step. Now, as a child of God, that's a catalog of my finer qualities. Anybody want a date? I'm looking for work. Now, let me tell you something. That's the greatest description of my personality I ever saw, and I want to tell you what makes it alcoholism. You see, given those symptoms, that ism, that... If you're new in this room, I want to suggest something to you. At every meeting you go to, you're going to hear those exact same symptoms, and I'm going to go out on a limb. If you're an old-timer and you've been around for a long time, I'm going to submit to you that I believe you've heard them at every meeting you've been to. However, here's how you're going to hear them. I don't fit in. I don't belong. I'm not a part of. What's wrong with me? I must be different. It's how all that comes out. Not a big psychological breakthrough, but it's real. Now I'm going to tell you how it affects me. You see, my sponsor that I have today, Clancy, tells me I have what's called a disease of perception. Now, it's going to help you to understand what I mean by that, or this dialogue is going to become a moot point here pretty quick. When I was new, I was about 3 minutes sober, and my sponsor took me to a meeting in Chicago because the police were looking for me in Mo Lane. We went to this anniversary of this group called the Mustard Seed Group. Now, I'd been around AA for quite a while by this time, so I was pretty sure I knew how AA worked. I just couldn't stay sober. So he takes me to this meeting, and it's seated just like this. There's about 300 people in the room. And my sponsor's in the front row with all the old cronies. And they put us sick ones in the second row, in my opinion, so they didn't have to look at the disease. And there's a speaker up here, speaking just like I am, lying, just like some of you are going to think I am before I'm done. And I'm talking to my best friend, Jimmy. I've known him 3 minutes. He's sitting right next to me. I found it necessary to critique the speaker, just like I've seen some of you doing already. So he starts talking on, and I heard that speaker say something that I know is a bald-faced lie. I looked at Jimmy and I said, I'm talking out loud. I said, Jimmy, how could New York send him to talk at this anniversary? He's a liar. Then he talked on, and I couldn't stand it. I'm going crazy because I'm trying to be spiritual. I'm sober 3.5 weeks. I said, Jimmy, he couldn't have done that. He'd be in prison for the rest of his natural life. And Jimmy goes, shh. And then he talked on, and I could, Jimmy, he's a liar. He couldn't have drank like that. I know his guts would fall out. And Jimmy goes, shh. And then he talked on. I said, oh, Jimmy, I can't stand it. He couldn't have done that. He'd be locked up in the psych ward. I know. I've been there 17 times. I guess my sponsor got sick and tired of hearing me. He turned around and looked me right in the eye in front of 300 people. Here's what I heard him say. Shut up, you goddamn loser. You ain't got a thing to say we want to hear. And if we ever think you do, we'll come out to that abandoned car we pulled you out of behind Harvey's restaurant. We'll fill your little horn and invite you in to share. Now, until then, sit there, keep your big mouth shut, or leave. That's what I heard him say. Come to find out, here's what he really said. So I hear funny. So here I am, I'm 8 or 9 years old. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm already plagued with these feelings I don't understand. And I'm somewhere between 8 and 9 years old. I'm at home and I look in the mirror and I think to myself, Butler, it's too bad, pal. It's going to be a long life. And it's going to be lonely because you are butt ugly, pal. I have no God-given idea where that thought came from. My mother never sat me down and said, oh, you poor little son of a... You are so ugly. Just out of mercy alone, I'd put you back if I could. That's not what my mother said, but that's what I heard when she said, Wayne, I love you. You hear me? I also felt retarded. Now, I'm going to tell you something about people like me, and I presume people like you. I lack the power to act better than I feel, unlike Earth people out there. By God, Earth people can control their feelings. Not me. I follow them. Even if it's going to kill me, I want to make sure by doing it. And I felt retarded, so apparently, in an effort to not be insane, I acted how I felt. And I started acting retarded. You know what will happen if you act retarded? They'll diagnose you. I got diagnosed severely emotionally retarded in 9th grade, and they put me in a retarded class. Not special ed, not the remedials, the retarded class. My nickname was Retardo. I loved it. And I'm going to tell you something. By the end of my 9th grade, I'd improved so much they kept me there. I never left the retarded class. I graduated high school with the retarded class. I was on the short bus for a long time. Now I'm 17 years old. Now there's a guy named Tom who takes us retarded kids on field trips because he gets extra merit badges for Boy Scouts or something like that. And he liked me. He said I was the brightest of the bunch. I was pretty pleased about that. I remember I told my sponsor one time that Tom said I was the brightest of the bunch, and he said, hey, dummy, do you know a light bulb burns brightest just before it burns out? You gotta love your sponsor. So Tom takes us on field trips. And we came to the senior dance. I'm 17 years old. I'm 6'3". I weigh 120 pounds. And I swear to God, in 4 years of high school, I never spoke 10 sentences. The caption under my name in a yearbook reads, Silent Butler. I never said a word to nobody. I was cunning, baffling. I thought powerful. Tom takes me to the senior dance. I go to that senior dance. Biggest thing on my body is an infected pimple. I just feel terrible. And I'm standing up against the wall with my 13.5-inch gunboat feet, and I swear to God, if you say one word about my feet, I'll kill your family. That's how I felt. And I'm watching boys and girls do what boys and girls do, but I don't know what they do, so I'm just watching them do what they did. And Tom brings me over this long brown bottle with a red, white, and blue label called Budweiser. I swear to God, if I'd known what it was going to do, I'd have saluted it. He brings me over that bottle of Bud, and he says, here, Wayne, drink it. It'll make you feel better. I drank it, and I said, Tom, that tastes terrible. I want a Pepsi-Cola. Tom said, that's okay, kid. You'll get used to it. Now, that isn't what he meant. What he meant was, like anybody else that drinks for the first time, you're going to be a snot-nosed little kid. You're probably going to drink too much, pee in your dresser drawer, have to do your laundry, but you'll be okay. That ain't what happened to me, and that isn't what happens to the alcoholic. An abnormal reaction in my mind took place. Silkworth calls it an illusion. What that means is the earth people don't see it, but I will defend it to the death. It's an illusion. Somewhere between 4 and 5 Budweisers, I got so good looking I couldn't stand it. I looked down the dance floor. I eyeballed me a blue-eyed blonde dancing with some loser. And I walked right up to her and asked her to dance, and she said yes. I found out later that night sex meant 2 people. I didn't know that. I'm in the retarded class. What do I know? Came through the next morning, couldn't remember what all took place. Tom told me I had a great time. Went back to retarded class. A few weeks later, my dad calls me and said, pal, we got a problem. I said, what's that? He said, you know that girl you was with at that party? I said, yes. He said, you know she's 16? I said, no. What do I know? He said, she's pregnant. I said, what's that mean? You know there's a law in Illinois where a boy 14 or older has sex with a girl 17 or younger. It's called statutory rape. I said, what's that mean, Dad? He says, 20 years to life. I said, even if you're retarded? So we did some research, and we found out if you marry him, you don't go to jail, so I fell in love. We got married. You got to picture this. We drive down to Palmyra, Missouri in separate cars. On the way back is my mom and dad driving, me and my new wife, Bonnie, with little Wayne in the tummy. And it occurs to me, I'm about to graduate the retarded class in high school. I'm married, going to have a baby, and I've drank one time. I'm done. Now, Silkworth says that people like me who drink like I do and feel the way I do, we get geographical. What that means is when it's displeasant over here, we move over there. Now, my brother was in a place called Vietnam. I didn't know where that was, but his mail was marked airmail free. So I knew that was a long way from where I was. So I remember asking my dad if I could join the Navy. My dad looked me right in the eye and he said, son, I don't know if they'll take a retarded kid, but let's go see. And on the way to the recruiting office, he says, now don't tell them what class you're in. Just tell them you're a senior. I'll sign the papers. Don't tell them you're retarded. You'll be fine. So he coached me into the Navy. I joined the Naval Reserve. And everything was happy, joyous, and free. I graduated high school. And just before I turned 18, I went to a party. Now, you see, in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, Dr. Silkworth tells me that I'm going to experience strange mental twists prior to a lapse into drinking. Well, I went to that party and I noticed Budweiser, and I made a conscious decision not to drink Budweiser because I don't want no more babies. But I saw this big bottle of clear liquid called tequila, and I never had that before. So I drank the whole bottle. Tom said, you got to watch out. That ain't like Budweiser. That'll catch up to you. I didn't know what he meant by that. I do now. It means I'm going to talk to God in person. I had a conversation with God that night, and I told God all the things I thought was done to me by my family growing up, and I wanted to get even. I heard God tell me to go home and kill my family. And as a result of that, I ended up in the psychiatric system. I'm examined by doctors. I take the MMPI to Cal State Poly, and they tell me I'm crazy as hell. And they want to confine me. They can't release me because if they release me and I do bodily harm to my family, they'll be sued, they'll be liable, they can't do that. And my mother looked right at that doctor and said, but you can't keep him, he's in the Navy, he'll be AWOL. You got to love your mother. Because one of them psychiatrists was a lieutenant in the United States Naval Reserve. And when he found out I was in the Naval Reserve, this was in May of 1968. By July 1968, he said, Mrs. Butler, we know a good place for your son where he can serve his country and do his thing. And I found myself in Vietnam before he could blink. They didn't think I'd come back. I've been in 17 psychiatric institutions, and I love it there. I really do. It's warm and fuzzy. See, if you drank like I drank, I'm going to tell you how to do this in case you slip. If you drank like I drank and you act like I acted on the streets, I couldn't get a date to save my life. But you put me in a psych ward and I got a 50-50 shot. Some of them institutions even tie them down. I don't know what to tell you. Now, I've had enough Thorazine put in my system to slow me down until I'm 210. Now, Thorazine doesn't do a damn thing to slow down your thinking or desiring, but it will keep you away for a long time. You'll never get there. You can think whatever you want, but you're never going to arrive. Well, I know if it does it to me, it's got to do it to you girls, too. So they bring the med cart right out onto the floor of the psych ward. I just pick out which one I want to date and watch her take her Thorazine, then I'd time it. Because I know in about a half hour I'm going to have a date. That does not make me crazy. It just means there's something wrong. We don't know what that is. It looks like I'm nuts. It looks like I have some psychosocial disorder that needs to be treated. Very little did they know about alcoholism, or they could have called it alcoholism 25 years ago. 30 years ago. But they called it many other things out of the DSM-3. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous is so important, people. We have to keep Alcoholics Anonymous pure, so that when some sick and suffering alcoholic that's confused stumbles in these rooms, he's going to be filled with experts all around him. You and I sharing our personal experience one with another. You can say, yeah, I felt like that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, that's me. I drank like you. My God, what can I do? And then I promise you, me or someone like me will sit down and share with you what we did. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. But at that time, they didn't have this there. And I was sent into the system. But for the grace of God, I drank again. Now, you'd think I wouldn't drink after that second experience. I ended up in Vietnam. I was gone 3 years. I don't want to take a lot of time. I never drank the entire time I was gone in Vietnam. Never did a drug. Never done nothing. Just went stark raving insane. Came back from there 3 years later. I was captain's driver. Been decorated. My career was set. I was playing baseball for the 7th Fleet. My life was set, folks. I'm 21 years old, and it looks good. I haven't drank since that second time. I mean, you got to admit, after the first 2 times I drank, you might want to think about it. So I'm playing baseball and having a good time, and then the captain asked me about babies. My captain respects me just like my sponsor does, and I don't want to do anything to usurp that respect. When my captain asked me to babysit his children so he could go to an officer's ball, I, of course, said yes immediately. I checked out the ship's company car, and on the way to pick up his kids, a thought occurred to me from nowhere. Wayne, let's stop and get a 6-pack of Bud. What the hell? What can it hurt? We ain't drank for 3 years, and prior to that, we only drank twice, and nothing really bad happened. I don't know if you think like that, but I stopped and bought that 6-pack and drank it, and then I put his precious little children into that car to go get another 6-pack, and that's all I remember. I blacked out. I came out of that blackout with my captain 2 inches from my face, screaming, "Where's my kids?" I didn't know. He really wanted to know. We had to do some research to find them. That got me discharged from the Navy because I refused to go to treatment. You see, he had me see a doctor in the Navy by the name of Persh, who said that I was an alcoholic. And I said, I'm not an alcoholic. I've only drank 3 times in my life. By then it was 4. I said, I'm not no alcoholic. I got problems. You wouldn't have taken me if I didn't have problems, remember? And so they solved their problem. They discharged me from the Navy. And to make a long story short, from that day to the day I took my last drink, I was drinking for the same exact reason, to recreate the original effect produced when I was 17. And that effect produced is very simple. If you're new, I want you to hear this. It's in the 12 and 12. Dr. Tebow, through Father Ed Dowling, wrote this for Bill Wilson. He said that the reason we loved alcohol all too much is because it did let us act extemporaneously, and then Bacchus boomeranged on us. You know, Bacchus, in the old days, is called the god of wine. It's talking about the effect produced as godlike. Do you know what that means, extemporaneous? It's just a big word which means I can walk amongst you in a natural state of condition. In other words, when I drink alcohol, I don't feel skinny, I don't feel afraid, I don't care if I got pimples, I can talk to girls, I can be amongst men, I can be a man amongst men, free of my fears. Only I don't know it, it's an illusion. And that's why alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, because when I ingest ethyl hydroxide into my system, when I drink Budweiser, something happens to me at a level beneath my consciousness that is so cunning and so baffling, it leads me to believe that I can keep drinking and I will one day again feel normal. And I submit to you that day will never come again. I have to find a sufficient substitute for the effect produced by alcohol. If I am not to find that substitute, I am condemned and committed to drink again and again and again and again and again, and I have that proof. Thank God for the people of Alcoholics Anonymous who reach out to people like you and I. Winter of 1972, it was too cold to stay where I was now living. You see, my wife kicked me out. I couldn't stay there no more. My second wife. I was kicked out, had nowhere to go. Even my friends wouldn't talk to me. I couldn't even stay in the bar, Larry's Oasis. He allowed me to sleep in the duplex out back. He had side-by-side dumpsters. And I'm going to tell you something. Well, here, in case you slip, let me tell you this, and you're in the Midwest. It gets cold there. But if you burrow down into about 3 feet of decomposing, freezing garbage, it gives off a strange kind of a heat that'll keep you from getting frostbite. And if you're hungry, what the hell? Now, I remember I slept in that dumpster because it was so cold out I couldn't get out, and I heard a knock on the lid of my dumpster. I was home. Opened my door. You know who was looking down in there at me? My father. He looked at me and he says, "You want to come home?" My mind says, "No." Looks like I'm enjoying life. Dad, I'd invite you in if I had room. After all, Dad, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and what you do. That's what my mind said. You know what my mouth said? "No, thanks, Dad. I'm doing fine." He didn't need Al-Anon. Closed the lid. Left. Did not try to coerce me. He released me with love. And I'm so glad he did. If he'd have taken me home, I would be dead right now. I believe that. It got too cold to stay in that dumpster, so I went to this restaurant called Harvey's Restaurant. And you know, I got this ability to make old women feel sorry for me. I don't know where that comes from, but I just got it. And I'd talk this waitress on the third shift into giving me a hot cup of water, and I would mix Heinz tomato ketchup up in it to get myself a hot cup of soup. And then she would hide saltines in the garbage can out back so I could find them so she wouldn't get fired for helping a bum. Unbeknownst to me, the owner of that restaurant's a guy named Harvey. He'd been watching me. He allowed me to cut a deal with her to mop and wax the dining room floors for 2 sausage sandwiches on whole wheat toast. I thought that wasn't a whole lot, but you can't really argue when you're sleeping out back in the car. One night, Harvey comes in and he's got this brass coin. On one side, he's got 2 A's. On another side, he's got this stupid prayer, "God grant me something." I don't know what it is. But he says, "Here." Now, here's what he actually said. He said, "I want you to take this coin to 416 16th Street, Moline. Go in and see those people. They're friends of mine. Tell them Harvey sent you. They're going to help you." Now, that's what he said. Here's what I heard. If you go down there, these friends of mine are going to give you some free food to eat because we know you're hungry. They're going to give you some pocket dough because we know you're broke. And they're going to give you 3 or 4 packs of Pell-Mell tailor-made cigarettes. I haven't had a tailor-made cigarette in a long time. See, I'm a curb butt smoker. We got any curb butt smokers in here? That's a fine art. Now I'm going to tell you how it is. When you're moping along with nothing left in your life and you're looking for a 1-incher, God, you pray for a 2-incher. And you're going along the curb and you carry wads of paper in your pocket so that when you find one laying in the gutter, you can drop that paper beside it, make it look to the world around you that you are sure is watching you. And I can sit down there and pick up that wad of paper, put that little butt in my mouth and smoke it and hope to God I don't get demoralized one more time. So if I hadn't heard him say that, I wouldn't have went to that place the next day. If Harvey would have said, "Wayne, you're going to AA," I wouldn't have went because I'm not an alcoholic. I've got problems. I got lots of problems. I ain't no alcoholic. So I went there, and he told me that there'd be a light bulb hanging on a cord. If it was on, go in. That means they're there. They're expecting you. But I want you to go with me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I go down there and I see this building, 416 16th Street. I see the cellar doorway. I notice the windows are painted black. Can't see in, they can't see out. Found out that was anonymity. And then I looked up on the side of the building and had a big sign posted by the city of Moline which read, "Building condemned. Do not enter." Right beneath it was another sign with an arrow pointing into the cellar. It said, "AA 16th Street, welcome." That made me think. And then I saw the light bulb, and it was indeed hanging on a cord, but it was flickering. He said if it was on, to go in. He didn't tell me what it meant if it was flickering. And I stood there staring at that flickering light, waiting for it to go steady. And it made me absolutely out of my mind. So I went over to Larry's Oasis and talked Larry out of a couple beers, and pretty soon I didn't care anymore, and I went to 416 16th Street. The light was on. I charged through the cellar doorway. I failed to notice the door was 5 pennies. I'm 6'3". I caught that door header right across my eyebrow. The impact literally knocked me off my feet, and I slid into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. About 6 feet inside the door is a round table with 6 or 7 old farts waiting to die, and I slid between 2 of them. And this old ugly one gets up out of the chair and goes just like this. And then I heard him say, slide right in here, dummy. We got a wrench that fit every nut that comes in the door. I didn't like him right away. And I'm reaching for that gun I got toted in my boot. And just as I'm ready to pop a cap in his butt, I heard him say, dummy. I said, my name's Wayne. He says, I got it, dummy. I'm going to be your sponsor. That saved his life. You might wonder why. I've never been to AA. What would that mean to me? Well, because I played baseball. Sponsors pay for everything. I was quick. I got up off that floor and stuck my head right up Barney's draft. They say I was so close to him for 5 years he should have put turn signals on his hips to keep from breaking my neck should he turn left or right. God loved my sponsor, both of them. For the next 5 years I went to meetings drinking. Every day. I drank before meetings, I drank after meetings, and sometimes when I couldn't stand no more of your smiles and hugs, I drank during meetings. Now I'm going to suggest something to you. If you ever find a gathering like this where a drinking drunk is not allowed to sit in and listen, in my opinion, that's not AA. That's a gathering of people forgot where they came from. However, in case you slip, we do want you to behave if you're drinking. Therein lies my problem. I can either drink or I can behave. I just can't do it simultaneously. The home group, about 4 years drinking, and I walked in during the speaker, of course, late, disrupted the meeting, of course, and something happens to my personality, no matter how spiritual I am, when authority presents itself, I get unspiritual quick. I don't know what that is. I walks in, there's a speaker speaking, I walk in and make an appearance, an old-timer gets up and says, you got to quiet down, you're disrupting the meeting. I looked at him, and all of a sudden I wasn't spiritual no more. I looked at him and I said, I don't want to. None of them got up and said, you got to sit down and be quiet, you're disrupting the meeting. And I said, I don't have to. Another one got up and said, you got to leave. You're welcome to come back tomorrow because we don't kick anybody out of AA. But we do have a right to a peaceful meeting, and if you can't conduct yourself, you've got to leave. And I said to him, you can't make me. Oh, yes, they can. 4 guys about Sean's size, each one grabbed an arm and a leg. Talked to newcomer into holding the door open. I knew as I flew by. Just before I landed out on 16th Street, I heard one of the old timers yell out, keep coming back! I wasn't sure about the sincerity of AA at that point. But I did keep coming back. 4.5 years drinking, I walked into a meeting, and I heard my sponsor yell out, hey, dummy. I said, what? He said, you know this program tends to work better if you don't drink? I didn't know that. That truly never occurred to me. And it splintered my mind. And in that fraction of a second, I reached down into my boot, pulled that .357 out, wheeled it around, and fired a round off at my sponsor's face. I missed him 6 inches high. They say if Barney was 6 foot tall, he'd be 6 foot under. I came to the next morning in 6-point leather restraints tied to a steel bed in the center of a padded room at Franciscan Mental Health Center in Rock Island, Illinois. It was my 17th trip to the psych ward. I was black and blue from head to toe from a little AA group therapy. Good therapy. Never done that again. I had a visitor the next morning. You know who it was? Barney. I couldn't get rid of him for nothing. He was like a maggot on a bad piece of meat, I'm telling you. So I'm tied down in 6-point letters. I'm naked. I'm beat up from the throat up to the foot down, and I'm laying there face up, and he walks into my seclusion room as a visitor the next morning. He's got a nurse behind him because they won't let him come in alone in case I might bite through the straps and kill him. I don't even got any teeth. They took them away. He looks down at me and he says, dummy, that's what I heard. There's something wrong with you. I don't even know if you're an alcoholic. You might just be nuts. And I'm thinking, nuts, huh? They got to let me out of here someday, pal. I know where you live. And then it's like you had ESPN. Next thing out of his mouth, he says, dummy, I don't know if they're going to let you out of here. They're talking about keeping you and studying you a while. But if they let you out of here, if you come with us and do what we did and still do, you can recover too. Not a word of judgment. Not a word of, do you know what you did to me last night? This guy was showing me the example of Alcoholics Anonymous as he ministered the program to me through his actions. And they say you can't reach a drinking drunk. That's not true. My experience says that's not true. He was reaching me. I just didn't know it. I was humanly incapable to know. He got me released into his custody. Can you believe that? I don't know if I could be that humble. This guy must have believed that part in the big book where it said, do not be afraid to go to the most sordid spot on earth to carry this message. God will keep you unharmed. My sponsor assured me I was a sordid place. 6 months later, I took what appears to have been my last drink. Didn't mean to. It was cold. It was November again, 1977. I'd bought a six-pack of Budweiser. Well, that's a lie. I stole it. And I'm sitting on the front stoop of the Moline Group drinking that beer. It's 20 degrees out. It was raining and a sleet. And I'm sitting there shivering and freezing and drinking, and I drank the third can and decided to kill myself. I couldn't take it anymore. Guess who shows up right then? Barney. He's there early. See, he comes early. His idea of being on time is an hour early. My God. His idea of leaving on time is an hour after the meeting's over so he can mix with people he doesn't even like. And so he just happens to show up before I leave to go kill myself. And you know what? He doesn't say a thing about my drinking. He says, dummy, that's what I heard. Why don't you come in and help me set up for the meeting? I don't think I can do it by myself. And I forgot and left the six-pack of Bud sitting there by the stoop. And by the time that meeting was over, I didn't go looking for it. And from that day to this day, I have not picked up a drink. I've had no alcohol, no pills, powders, potions, or lotions in my body. But it hasn't been easy, folks. If you're new in this room, I want you to know something. We're asking you for a commitment that's going to save your life and in turn save somebody else's life. My sponsor said to me, dummy, that's what I heard. Said, I want you to give us a year. Give AA and me a year. He says, turn your will and your life over to God. I want your ass. You hear me? Give us a year of your life. He says, that first year, you're going to build a foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous. You're going to take commitments. You're going to go to a meeting every day. You're going to turn your will and your life over to God, and you're going to do what we have experienced want you to do because that's what's going to give you a new chance. He says, if you do that through your first year, you will build a foundation upon which your higher power, God, as you understand him, is going to place a house. And if you do it right, it will become a mansion with many rooms for you and all your friends of AA to live in. And someday in the future, when a certain emotional storm is going to hit your life, that foundation will withstand the storm and you will not drink. But if you do not build that foundation, you will have a weak foundation. And if you don't go back and reconstruct it at a more painful later date, you're sure to drink. And I bought it. And for a year I did everything. But I want to tell you about something he did my third week sober. He's going to take me to a convention of all you people. My home group was 15 strong. All old, waiting to die. See, I was a fresh piece of meat. They hadn't seen a newcomer at that group for a long time. They loved me. Oh, my God, they'd almost loved me to death. Barney says, we're going to a convention in Rock Island. But you can't go looking like that and smelling like that. That's when I had hair. I didn't have any teeth. So I had a full beard that I hadn't washed in a long time. And the reason I had the beard was because I was so ashamed I had no teeth. And I had long hair, and for you that like long hair, I have no opinion. It's not me. But yet I had it because I felt so different. I made myself look different to match how I felt so I wouldn't go psychotic. And my sponsor said, let's get you cleaned up. Barney took me to his favorite clothing store to get me a new set of clothes to meet you fine people. He took me to the Salvation Army. Sharon's going to remember this part. He took me there and he bought me a suit. You know what my suit was? lime green, double knit, polyester. Yeah. Remember that? And the lining was yellow. Had green tennis rackets. So Barney bought it. So then we went over to the shirt department and I said, Barney, I'm drawing the line. I'm buying the shirt. So I picked out what I thought was a silk shirt. It had animals on it. It's cool. The collar went down to here. It was open to there. Cost me about 10 cents. And then we went to the underwear and I said, no. I balked at that. I don't know where it's been. It ain't going on me. And then he took me to the shoe department. Oh, the shoe department at Salvation Army. The only 13.5-inch gunboats they had in supply. Any disco people here? Remember those black and brown box toe Oxford 2.5-inch platform sole with a 6-inch heel? That's all they had, so we bought them. We got out of Salvation Army for $1.85. And he took me to that convention, put me at the front door, and said, my job is to be a greeter. Thanksgiving 1977. You know who the speakers were at that convention? Norm Alpy, Chuck C., Ted Elsa Whitting, Johnny H., Clancy I., Dottie Shore, a guy named Tom Brady from Charlotte, North Carolina. Oh, I was blessed. And if you're new here, I hope you feel blessed with the presence that's in this arena tonight. I hope you do. Something happened to me. But I got to tell you this. Being the greeter was not a lot of fun. I remember when Chuck C. walked up to shake my sponsor's hand, then he looked, all he did was caught a view of that suit. And all I heard was, I'd have shot him if I'd have known who he was for sure. And he walked by and Clancy took one look at me and frisked me, laughing all the way. Johnny moved quick. Dottie gave me a hug. Elsa gave me a hug. Tom said something I couldn't understand. And I couldn't. They were all laughing, though. They weren't laughing when Barney shook their hand. But as soon as they started to shake mine, they laughed uncontrollably. And I finally said, Barney, are they laughing at me? He looks at me right in the eye and he said, yeah. Yeah, they are. He says, you know what, dummy? So I heard. If you ever learn to laugh at yourself, you'll never be left unamused. I could have took that personal if I could think quick enough. And then my sponsor did something I don't know if I could have been humble enough to do. He gave me his seat at the speaker table. And I had nothing to say. I sat there and listened, and I was mesmerized. I hated him, but I was mesmerized. And I've been going to conventions ever since. I'm a convention-making junkie. I really am. I go every chance I get. Went to every one I could get to. I slept in the stairwells sometimes when I couldn't afford it because I was paying my bills for a change. Sponsors have a funny way of making you do that kind of stuff. I would take service commitments to get my registration paid for. There is no such thing as I can't go. No such thing. There is a thing as I don't want to go. I'm not willing to go. But there is no such thing as I can't. My sponsor said that if I really wanted to do this thing, that I would find a way to do it. By the good grace of God, that happened to me. I did that first year just like he said. Took commitments I didn't want to take, went to a meeting every stinking, lively, miserable day. Stood at the door greeting people I didn't like, trying to lift wallets I couldn't get to. Washing cups I didn't dirty, picking up cigarette butts I didn't put on the floor. What's this got to do with drinking? Shut up. That's what I heard. He said, now you got to work with somebody. I said, my God, Barney, I'm only 5 months sober. He said, okay, find somebody with 3. And so I did. I went on a mission. I caught a guy coming in my home group totally unsuspecting of my nature. I raced right up to him in an uncontrollable urge, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him up against the wall and said, listen, asshole! If you want what I got, you got to do what I did.
here's what I heard. You ain't got a goddamn thing I want. So I went and ratted him out to my sponsor. I said, Bernie, he said he don't want nothing I got. He said, neither's anybody else. He says, but keep plugging away because you're going to find someone too sick to know it's you. Well, it was all about love. And then at the end of the year, I want to caution you, newcomer, about something. At the end of the year, at my home group in Illinois, they give you a chip. And the sponsor says something nice about you. They got to make it up, but they do to make you feel good. And then you're supposed to come up and thank them and then sit down and shut up. But I got confused on the way to my ascension. See, my sponsor said a couple of nice things. He gave me my chip and sat down. I got up and I said, I'm Wayne, I'm an alcoholic. And just as I said that, I looked above my sponsor's head and I saw Bill and Bob's picture on the wall, and I damn well saw mine floating up between them. And in a moment, I looked down at my sponsor and realized what a pathetic loser he was after all these years of sobriety. Look at me after one. I am walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Something happened to him. And I realized I'd outgrown my sponsor. So I fired him. I didn't tell him, I just did it. And from my second year to my seventh year, I did steps 1, 12, and 13. By the way, ladies, if I come up to you tonight, after the meeting, perhaps during a dance, say, hey. Maybe I'll even posture a bit. Hey. Would you like to go have coffee and talk about God? Run! Seven years dry, without a sponsor. I'm more depressed now than I've ever been in my life. You see, I'm convinced AA doesn't work. I've been coming to meetings every single day and doing what I think is everything I'm supposed to do, unaware of my own condition. I weigh 146 pounds. I've lost my teeth again, I know not where. I am like a man who's lost his teeth. I can't grow new ones. I can't call my sponsor. Listen to this, newcomer. I can't call my sponsor because I've been lying on him for 6 years now. I can't come to you because it's you whom I've been lying to. I don't know what to do. So I called the only friend I got left. I called my psychiatrist. Now, I'm not sharing an opinion. Don't leave here tonight and say that speaker gave an opinion. This is my personal experience. I called that doctor. He called me in. He gave me some tests, drew my blood, and told me I had a chemical imbalance and I needed to take a drug called lithium. And then he told me I needed to take a drug called amitriptyline, which is a pain blocker. And then he asked me if I'd be willing to participate in a volunteer program for a new antidepressant, which is now known as Prozac. And I said, yeah. So he gave me the prescription. I went to the drugstore, filled that prescription, and before I took it, a thought came from nowhere. Barney. Call Barney. So I called him. I said, Barney, I think I better talk to you. So he says, okay, I'll meet you at the Maid-Rite. Why couldn't we just went home? Why do I got to go to the Maid-Rite? See, he wants witnesses. So I meet him in the Maid-Rite, and he's sitting in the center table where everybody can hear our conversation. That's what old-timers do. They embarrass you to death. So I set my bag of pills on the table. Barney's looking at me like this, and I said, Barney, I'm bipolar. He looked at me and he says, I know. We all know. We've known for a long time you're bipolar. He says, you know what, dummy? One of these days you're going to be walking down 16th Street and you're going to hear the loudest explosion you've ever heard. It's going to be your head popping right out of your ass. And you won't be bipolar no more. I hated his guts. And then you know what he said to me? He said, I'm not a doctor, but I do know this. I know that you suffer from a condition known as alcoholism, and you have not done anything that is required in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to consummate recovery, and you should be 10 times more depressed than you ever were. He says, how are you going to know what your problem is if you don't try to 2 years of your life? They get greedy. And he says, if after 2 years you're not doing better, I'll go to the doctor with you and we'll take them pills. And he sold me on it. I put the pills away and never took them. He sent me to California, and I spent 6 months with Clancy in the Pacific Group. Came back to Illinois. Took the steps the way they're outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Used the 12 and 12 for amplification and understanding. And I got to tell you something. I wish it was more profound than that. Combined with the service and the commitments, the 12 steps continue and conclude the triangle of Alcoholics Anonymous. By my 9th year of sobriety, I weighed 242 pounds. My depression lifted. And to this very day has never came back. That's amazing power of this program called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been given gifts in this program because I've worked for them. I've done things in AA I never thought possible. Moved to Des Moines, Iowa, because I had a dream. Can you believe I got to become a police officer? Think about that for a minute. I've been institutionalized 17 times. I've been arrested twice for attempted murder. I'm a domestic violator 9 times. I've been divorced twice with 5 kids. And I want to be a cop. Well, see, in Iowa, they call that good experience. My sponsor directed me to get my record expunged, so I did. And that enabled me to join the Sheriff's Reserve in Des Moines, Iowa to start with. I remember when I went into the academy. Remember that retarded thing? I had the ability, because of you, to tell my fellow academy mate that I don't know how to read and write very well, I don't know how to study, I don't know what to do, what am I going to do? You know what these 18 people did? They sat me down and I wrote, memorized everything, card after card after card after card. They took shifts before every test. And I wrote, memorized the cards, and when it came to the question, I matched the card, and I passed. I graduated the 4th in my class. Can you believe that? I called my sponsor, Barney, I'm graduating. 4th in my class. Barney cried. Said he was proud of me. And then I said, Barney, they gave me my gun. I heard him say, oh, shit. I took that as approval. And I got to do that for 5 years. And then I moved to California to join my beloved Pacific Group. Clancy became my sponsor. I had many friends in that group. I miss if I'm not there. Sharon and Casey are friends of mine. You can find me at the Pacific Group, center aisle, 3rd row down, 6th seat in, every Wednesday night. I'll be there. I love my home group. I went there because I fell in love with that group, because there are people like me, alcoholics, that I identify with, and I'm going to tell you why. You see, the problem is, I feel like I don't fit in, I don't belong, I'm not a part of. I consciously always wonder what's wrong with me. I know my case is different. When I drink when I drink Budweiser, something happens to me at an extemporaneous level that allows me to feel an illusion of fitting in and belonging. In a vision for you, it tells me, do we have a sufficient substitute for that effect produced it's referring to? It says yes. And vastly more than that, we have a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I'm with you, I'm not with me. You hear me? I belong. When they stood me at the door making me greet people I didn't even know, I began to fit in. When I did my 5th step, that strong sense of belonging came. When I heard someone else's 5th step, I felt like I was a part of the inner nucleus of Alcoholics Anonymous. I earned my seat. And now I know I'm a part of a greater whole. And when I sit with you, I no longer feel different. I haven't felt different this entire weekend. I've seen some strange things. But I have not felt different. We are people who normally would not miss. Would you agree with that? Oh, yeah. I've broke bread with some of you people this week that scare me. That should scare you. They're from your group, not mine. My life today is good. It hasn't gone the way I've wanted it to all the time, but my life is good. I'm doing things in my life that I didn't imagine could ever be done for a guy that graduated the retarded class from high school. I never got an education. I've learned my education right here in Alcoholics Anonymous. You taught me to walk and talk. You taught me how to dress, for my God. You taught me how to dress. Thank you. I fit in society. I know when to dress up now. I know when to go out there and look the part. But not only do I look the part, but I feel the part. And I learned that here with you because my sponsor wouldn't settle for anything but the best for me. And thank God he had my best at heart, because if it wasn't for him, I would have settled for less. I wouldn't have submitted, committed, and surrendered myself to the AA way. Because I've uncovered and discovered here, Alcoholics Anonymous is not a 12-step program. It's not a program at all. It's a way of life. And on page 15, paragraph 3 to 12 and 12, here's what it says. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer, who am I, to become happily and usefully whole. And I submit to you that's the carrot of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the summation of the 12 promises. When you take the 12 promises and condense them down to their most common denominator, here's what they are. I get to feel happy. I get to feel like a useful member of society, a useful human being. And I get to feel whole. With or without a woman, with or without a job, with or without conflict, I get to feel like a whole human being, because my real problem is internal spiritual maladjustment. And because of the actions I take in Alcoholics Anonymous through the power of 12 suggested steps, 12 traditions, and 12 concepts for world service, I'm given an opportunity to adjust to the world around me and within me. I do no longer have to be maladjusted if I am willing to submit, commit, and surrender myself to the AA way. And if I forget that, I will leave the AA way for a better idea. You know what my biggest plague right now is? Some days I wake up feeling normal. Now, I know that's hard for some of my friends to believe. But there's days I look in the mirror and I don't look like an alcoholic no more. Sometimes I don't even feel like an alcoholic. And then at 7 o'clock, my babies start to call me. Those alcoholics that I sponsor, by 8 o'clock, I know not only am I alcoholic, but I sponsor some really sick people. I fit in. I belong. I'm a part of. Commitments led to that. Those of you who put this conference on this weekend, there is no doubt you must feel a great part of this whole thing. I know I feel a part of it because I was asked to give up my weekend and come here and participate, and I did that. I feel a part of. I'm not a speaker. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just a drunk. Don't treat me like a speaker. I'm a drunk. I've had all the separation I want in my life. Am I putting that down? I'm not. We need carriers of the AA message. My God. Sharon goes around. Can I use you for a minute? Sharon goes around the world and carries the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those 6 people carried the message to me. I'm not up here out of ego. I'm up here because someone did it for me 21 years and 11 months ago. They gave up their entire weekend to come to Rock Island, Illinois. So a goofball madman named Insane Wayne could sit in the front row where he didn't want to be so that members of Alcoholics Anonymous could carry the message of love and service to him. And I'm going to tell you something. It wasn't because my sponsor loved me. My sponsor didn't love me. Not then. I'll tell you why I know that. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that an alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. It doesn't say baby boomer. It doesn't say unfortunate, unlovely one. It says I'm an animal because I have an animalistic way. That doesn't mean I'm mean. It just means I'm trying to survive like an animal, and I'm not very lovely. My sponsor loved AA, and that's why he did what he did for me. And now in my turn is to come out and do the same thing he did for me, because number one, that's going to ensure my sobriety. And perhaps it will allow me to pay a little bit of my debt to the God of my understanding for the way I lived my life for so long. I believe absolutely that I have a debt of gratitude to pay. And it didn't happen yesterday. It's got to happen today. You see, what I did last week, last month, last year has nothing to do with AA today. What keeps me sober today is what I do today. And my paying back to Alcoholics Anonymous ensures that I might get another tomorrow when I wake up. So I'm happy to come and do this. It's my privilege. I want to share this story with you as I close. About 7 months ago now, I want to tell you how important sponsorship is even today. Now, I want you to know I got a God in my life. And I'm not going to bore you with the details because it's not a religious program. You don't need to know what my God is. Just trust I've got one. But you know, sometimes I don't feel it, and I got to have that sponsor right there every day. Good example. 21 years sober, I needed my sponsor twice this year, but this one was the big one. I got petitioned by my 12-year-old son's mother and stepfather to adopt my son, forcibly. I've been in California 6.5 years. She cited me as an abandoning absentee father. And they wrote some really truthful information about what I used to be like when I drank in that petition. And they were going to adopt my son. I called my sponsor up and we talked about it. I talked to a lawyer and he said, we might be able to do something, but let's see what your son has to say. And I called my son up and I said, Zachary, do you want to be adopted? And he said, yes, I do. I want you to know something. I fell out of that chair, I dropped the phone, and I almost passed out. I took a shot. Shattered. I didn't know I had a heart that bad to be shattered. So that was twice in a month I got my heart shattered. Once the breakup of an engagement and then that. And I asked my sponsor, my God, Clancy, I can't do that. What am I going to do? He says, you have to do that. So I went out to Monterey Park Courthouse and went before a judge. And the judge says, Mr. Butler, are you aware you're signing an irrevocable consent to adopt your son, that he will no longer be your son, nor can you ever petition for rights? And I heard myself say, yes, sir. I signed the paper, left the court with my best friend, went right across, and threw up for the first time in 21 years. And I couldn't breathe. I thought I'd done something horrible. I couldn't even talk. And I died. My sponsor said, the tragedy of AA is there's no step to take that will mend a broken heart. I hope you've got lots of commitments. And I kept my commitments. I kept doing everything that was in front of me. I'd lost the love of my life, and now I've given up my son. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to keep my commitments. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to blame. I'm just going to do what there is to do. 3 months went by, and I got a phone call from my son's mother. After 9 years of continuous sobriety, she drank. And her husband drank after 12. And I guess they got in a terrible fight, and he abused her, and she left him, and she's divorcing him. And then she says, we need you to fly home. Your son needs you. You know what I want to say? He ain't my son. You took him away from me. That resentment just came from nowhere. And then I thought, can I call you back? You hear me? So I hung up, and I called my sponsor. I said, Clancy, what do I do? He says, buy a ticket. I said, but you don't understand. He's not my son. Buy a ticket. So I bought a ticket, and I went home, and there's my son. It's not his fault. He was telling me he wanted to be adopted because he thought it would bring peace to the family. That's why he said he wanted to be adopted. He told me that a month ago. Guess what happened? I spent a week in Illinois with my son. And while I was there, I discovered there's a law. I didn't know about this. I don't even know what it's called. But I know they only have a certain amount of time for the paperwork to get from Monterey Park to get to the Rock Island County Courthouse and be recorded. It didn't make it. It got lost in the mail. He's still my son. It's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? I cried. And he came out and stayed 3 weeks with me, and now she's offered me custody of him next year. How's that happen? Because I followed direction. I didn't call her up and call her names like I really wanted to. My sponsor said restraint of tongue and pen. It's in the book. He said be kind and loving and tolerant. Do the next right indicated action and don't ask any questions. Just do what you got to do. And thank God I followed those words because that is not what I wanted to do. And because of that, I've got my son back in my life. And I've got a career that's out of this world. Life is good. I hope if you're new in this room, I hope you know what we've got. We got a thing called alcoholism. And there's only one thing known to provide one day at a time sure-handed recovery by reaching out one alcoholic to another. And that's a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're not in the winner's circle, I hope you jump in the winner's circle. It's really easy. To jump in the winner's circle, put one hand in the hand of your loving Father God. Put your other hand in the hand of the newcomer, your sponsor, your home group, commitments, and you'll not have a hand left free to pick up a drink. Thank you for letting me share.
We hope you've enjoyed this tape. For additional copies, a free catalog of other tapes, or to find out about our Tape of the Month Club, call Encore at 1-800-878-1308. or visit our website at www.12steptapes.com.
Thanks for listening. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing.